So the first thing in our country is that we don't talk that way. When we talk about what we are teaching, we say, I'm teaching this curriculum. I'm teaching Romeo and Juliet. I'm teaching fractions. We say the what, but we never talk deeply enough about the how, which is what is going to determine what students learn. So the first thing we think principals need to know, and everybody they work with and everybody up and down the system needs to know, is this lens or this framework of the instructional core as a driver of student learning. Because once you understand that, then you understand what it is that teachers need to do for their work, which is to constantly be deepening their practice, right? And that requires that they're constantly understanding more deeply their own content area knowledge and their pedagogy, which sometimes get talked about as pedagogical content knowledge, which is how do kids think about math? What kind of mistakes do they make? How can I, if a kid makes this mistake, where does it come from? Is it something that I've taught before? What example can I give to make them realize the error of their ways, as opposed to just saying, no, the answer is 7, right? I'll do it for you. They need to set up, just real basic, the structures for teachers to collaborate. They need to have a lot of time together. It needs to be protected time. And the expectation of that time is you're going to be deepening your knowledge of the core, right? Bringing in research. This is what you do. This is what we do here. We're a school where we learn together. And in order to do that, Elaine, I think, mentioned this, or a couple people did, is that if you're going to have people engage in this public learning, particularly in education, where we're so used to personalizing it, you think I'm a bad teacher? Don't say that. That's going to mean you think he's a bad teacher. We can't talk like that. Is to say, to shift away from that idea that we are sort of people in this, even though, of course, we are, but what we're working on together as a whole school, because again, we don't want a great teacher over here and a terrible one over here. What we're working on together as a whole school is understanding this practice. Right? This is what good teaching looks like in math. This is what it looks like in science, and we are all getting better at it together. So in addition to supporting, kind of creating these structures for teachers and making that the purpose, principals need to make their schools a safe place for teachers to fail, just as this is what Elaine was saying. And it's often talked about as trust. We use the idea of psychological safety. It comes again from the management literature about learning organizations. But it's the idea that if I acknowledge making a mistake, if I acknowledge that I don't understand or I'm frightened to do something, or if I have to sit there and look at data that shows me that the way I've been teaching for 20 years is actually not good, I need to feel okay about that. And I need to know that if I try something in my classroom and it goes nuts and the kids go, there's a lot of noise or things get out of control, that I'm not going to have a principal come in and slam me on an evaluation, right? So principals need to make their schools psychologically safe for learning and making mistakes, and make very clear to the faculty, this is our work here together. We are all learning it. We are doing it together. They need to model it. So there's the knowledge piece, there's sort of ways to talk about it, and then there's these essential practices. So one of them is to build that idea of psychological safety, we do something called learning commitments, which you make as a whole school, you make individually in teams, and that basically asks people to talk about the kinds of learning experiences they've had that have really shut them down, what makes them not able to learn or engage, and the kinds of learning experiences they've had that made them feel very safe and most interested in learning. And we share those as a group. I need time to process. If somebody gives me something and expects me to read it in the moment, I'm going to panic, and I can't work that way, right? Or I need to be able to ask a question without feeling like everyone thinks I'm an idiot. And so once that's surfaced in the group, then we make commitments and we put them up on the wall. As a team, we commit to giving out everything we need to read a week ahead of time. As a team, we always ask questions, whatever it is. And it surfaces this idea that we're committed to supporting each other as learners. We get that this is a learning enterprise. We get that learning is a vulnerable activity. So let's make a commitment to each other that we're going to make this a safe space. So sort of examples of the idea, there is knowledge to be had. We know psychological safety is important or people won't learn, right? But we know that every time that's done, this essential practice of making learning commitments, that's the work that you have to do with your colleagues. That is your work, not ours. So I think that's sort of how we navigate the tension between telling somebody what to do versus saying, you're totally autonomous, right? The way you do it is going to look different in your context. And the act of doing this and figuring it out with your colleagues is super important. So it is your work, but we know where you need to go. And that's kind of the way we navigate that tension.